Greetings, everyone. Welcome to another episode of our live series, Ichi-go Ichi-e, a show where we discuss and present valuable insights about self-improvement, growth, and skill development. And this show is brought to you by Team Bertho and the Youth Exchange South to South, aka Yes Girls Movement. I'm your host, Fahmina Foy Shemonti, and the topic of today's live is finding hope after encountering and enduring trauma. And today, our guest for the show is Jamie Wilson. She's an author, a speaker, and an advocate for mental health and suicide prevention. She's also the founder of an online internet forum called Authentically Thriving Co. Hello, Jamie.
Hi, Famina.
It's so good to see you. How are you today? How are you doing?
I'm really good, thank you. How are you?
I'm fine by the grace of Almighty. So we actually know, or we are actually quite familiar with you, not fully, through the live session that you shared a few days ago in Team Bertho. So would you introduce yourself or tell us a little about yourself before we jump into the session?
Absolutely. On most levels, I'm as ordinary and average as you can get. I live in a middle-class home with a middle-class income. I have 2 children and a husband and a dog, and my main job for the past few years has been being a full-time parent. And I'm excited to reconnect with my writing gift and my writing skills, and it's very much a passion for me. So I'm enjoying building that into a career, beginning with content writing, and I'm working on a children's book on body consent. So it's a lot of fun to not just feel so average. Once I reignited my passion for writing, it was like I came alive on another level. It was really great.
Wow, that is incredible, especially the topic of the book. It's so new, but also it's been going on a lot on sociological standards, but there's no proper representation going on. So if your book comes along, that is gonna definitely make a huge change on that front.
One of the things is with being insecure and having a lack of self-love is in the past, I would have talked myself out of writing this book. My self-talk in my mind would have been, the market is oversaturated. You're not qualified. You can't do your own illustrations. Who do you think you are? And I would have laid that project aside or never started it. And I would have just had that cloud of like, So all of the steps I'll talk about that I've taken to get my mental health into a much better place, that's just one of the positive effects of loving myself and learning self-compassion comes first.
Oh, wow, that is very inspiring. So, Jamie, we're gonna jump into the session itself now, and I'm gonna leave the reins into your hands. So you are going to conduct the session the way you please. So are we good to go?
Absolutely.
I think we just lost Jamie for a little while.
I'm still here.
I'm sorry. It's good that we didn't lose you.
I'm ready. I'm good to go.
Okay, so then I guess we'll just jump on to the session now.
Okay. I would like to tell you.
I'm going to interrupt you a little bit. So for the audience, you already know what our topic is going to be. So I hope that you find guidance and, insight from Jamie. And Jamie, I'm sorry for interrupting. Please continue.
But you can hear me okay, right?
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear and very clear.
Awesome. So my trigger warning for all of the lovely people out there listening is that my abuser was a very close family member, and I'll get into that later. And my abuse was sexual in nature as a child. I'm not going to go into any of the details of how it played out, but I do want to let you know that I will be mentioning that I was sexually abused, and it was by a very close relative. So if you need to take a deep breath, to kind of get yourself ready, because it's an intense topic. And that's why nobody talks about it. It's embarrassing, it's dark, it's shameful. But I'm here to tell you that if anybody has abused you in any way, mental abuse, narcissistic abuse, abandonment, that I found hope after my situation, and my whole purpose is to share that hope with you. So my whole life, I struggled with depression, but I thought that I was evil, and I thought that I was broken, and that I was making God angry, because I was really raised in a religious home. And so part of my abuse was thinking that if I didn't allow my abuser to do the things that he was doing to my body, that I was going to have eternal punishment. So I'm like, well, God hates me. The person that's supposed to be caring for me and nurturing me hates me, but is telling me this is love. While he was abusing me, he was saying that it was a loving act. And he thought that it was a beautiful thing. He was so disturbed. And I know his backstory as well, because every abuser has a backstory. Nobody is born evil or good. The Jewish books, the Torah, or whichever part of the Jewish books it is, says that God gave humankind both the propensity for good and the propensity for evil. So that right there to me helped me get over some of my own fears of heaven and hell, and kind of accept all of the parts of myself. And I've pulled from all different types of philosophies and religion to make my own personal mix, which I absolutely love and recommend, because we are spiritual beings, physical beings, and mental beings. So we do want to engage all of those parts of ourselves when we can, at our own pace, on our own terms. So my abuse hurt me so badly that my brain protected me by blocking it out, and my brain protected me by disassociating, which is a big fancy word for pretending that it's not you. And I'd never really realized I was even doing it. And I told myself the survival story that I had two parents who loved me. Divorce is really big here in America. So having both of your parents in the same home at the time was highly valued. Now the value is having two healthy parents that love you, whether they live together or not. So our culture is changing, where they'd rather have people go ahead and just get a divorce and move on with your life instead of being miserable. So I was trapped in my home, and the abuse started before I was 4 years old. I have memories very, very young. So my brain and my development were affected by this abuse that I was being told were love, and I couldn't function. My parents were both raised in very abusive homes, and they were both very focused on themselves, not on purpose because they didn't love me, but because they also had used the same survival skills of denial and disassociation and just cutting yourself off from people emotionally. So my mom was there, and she was a homemaker, but she was screaming at me, and she was overwhelmed, and she had all of her own unprocessed trauma. And I'm able to kind of relate to that, because unfortunately, for the first few years of my children's life, I was repeating that pattern of being a narcissistic mother. I had so much anxiety undiagnosed, and my depression was so severe. I had racing thoughts all of the time. I couldn't control my thoughts. And so I was always constantly having these emotional outbursts, and I constantly felt like a victim, and I was always defensive. And because I didn't know I had been through trauma and abuse, I just thought I couldn't get a handle on myself and I was a failure as a human being. And why can everybody else work full time and keep their house clean and drive their kids to their activities? And I can't even do one of those things all of the way. So there was shame layered on top of shame, layered on top of self-hate. And I really did hate myself, because if even my own parent couldn't love me and see that that was harmful, and if even God, who supposedly sent his son to die and save the world, didn't love me and accept me, then how could I love and accept myself? And so by the time I was age 11, I was so hopeless that I decided to just end the pain myself by ending my life. And I went into the bathroom and I took every pill I could find in the cabinet, and I went in my bed and I laid down, and I was like, okay, it's finally going to stop. But unfortunately, or fortunately, at the time it didn't feel fortunate. It failed, and I just had some stomach pain, and I actually had a lot of fear of dying at that point. Team Bertho has an award-winning video on suicide awareness, and I watched that, and it was extremely powerful. So that's another great resource that Team Bertho has available on their Facebook page and their videos, and probably on their YouTube channel. And it's very, very good. So I was 11 years old, in the middle of adolescence, starting to have these major growth changes that everybody around that age begins to have, with no guidance, no support, being abused still. I actually stopped my memory recall on purpose at a certain point, because I felt like I had enough information to move forward, and it was just the memories were just getting harder and harder to deal with. So in that respect, I still do use some denial in a way, repression. I use a little bit of repression still, because there's nothing in the good for me if I wanted to keep remembering those other things. The good part for me was when I started having my flashbacks and I realized the abuse had taken place, it gave me this huge sense of freedom. Like, oh my God, it's not me. I'm not broken. I'm not broken. It was amazing feeling knowing that someone had hurt me. I wasn't just this flawed human that came out like defective. Like the runt of the litter in a way. The runt of the litter is not really valued, and nobody really cares if it lives or dies, because there's like 7 other puppies or kittens, and this little one, it's just going to be a waste anyway. Don't worry about it. And that's how I felt about myself, that I was a waste and I was worthless. And what right did I have to even breathe? So I started working at the age of 15, because, you know, in America, cars are a thing. And my parents said, if you want to drive, you need to pay for your own car insurance and you need to pay for your own license. So I started working, and I got fired from a couple different jobs for these emotional outbursts, which in hindsight were actually panic attacks. But I had no clue I even had anxiety, let alone I was having panic attacks, because since I was born, all of my developing years were full of anxiety, because I never knew when he was going to come in my room. I never knew how long it was going to take. And I always had this feeling like, is he there? Is he there? And the boogeyman was real for me. And it was my very own parent. So if you have been through incest, I see you and I love you and I value you, and you are not the problem, and you can heal. The first step you need to take for any kind of abuse. I've had friends go through domestic violence where their husbands have done such a number on their head, just called them all kinds of names over and over for years and years. And the thing is I've noticed there's a common thread with victims of abuse is that we find a way to blame ourselves, like we must deserve it, or we must not be good enough, or if we were better, they wouldn't treat us like that. It turns out that's also our brains trying to protect us in a way by telling us we have control over the situation. And if we just do better, the pain will stop. So our brains work for us and they work against us, but there are some things in life that our brains really just don't have a roadmap for. And I've been able to get help because there are a lot of professionals who have come up with roadmaps. When I was in college, GPS wasn't available on every phone. I had roadmaps. And now we have roadmaps, we have GPS, we have satellites, we have so many different options. I have 3 different GPS apps on my phone, depending on what I'm more interested in, like traffic flow versus miles and distance. So that's the same way with getting help to heal and to say, you know what, I don't deserve to treat myself like this or to allow other people to treat me like this. And find that one person you can reach out to. In America and Canada, I always recommend the crisis text line. There's resources everywhere. So just Google in your area a phone number to call. There's free therapists available. There's online therapy available. And the word therapy has such a negative connotation to it. But if you think about it, like if you are an athlete and you get an injury, you need physical therapy to teach that muscle how to work again, to teach that muscle how to be strong again after it's had a period of rest. Periods of rest are incredibly important for our wellness, body, mind, and soul. So also there's occupational therapy to help people with sensory issues. So when you're talking about therapy, you can just get a family counselor. You can get a hypnotherapist like Saba. She did a great job in episode 1 of the Ichi-go Ichi-e series explaining hypnotherapy, and she threw in a little example for the audience. It sounds like someone's going to hypnotize you and tell you what to do, but what it really is it's putting you into a sleep-like state, because that's when we process our experiences, our feelings, and our emotions. That's why sleep is so important. That's when your mind kind of figures everything out and it's like, okay, done with that now. So that's really what hypnotherapy does, is you have your talk session in the beginning, and then the specialized hypnotherapist will help you relax into a sleep-like state to get your brain to process what you just talked about, because it's the not processing it that keeps it all, and I don't like that feeling. I'm also on medication. I am very open about the fact that I take medication daily to keep the physical symptoms of my anxiety down and to help me with the depression. I can't do it alone because that's what my body thinks is normal right now. But I am getting better and it is helping. And when it came time for medication, that actually came before my flashbacks. I was so depressed that even though I had children and a husband, it was so touchy for me. I was definitely having suicidal ideations way too much. So I went to my doctor and I got the medication, and then I started to feel better and I started to be able to process like, oh, I'm not a terrible person. And then the flashbacks came when they came, and there was nothing I could do about it. I was just driving down the road, and all of a sudden it was like a movie going through my head of these things that had been done to me. And I pulled over and I called my husband, and I was so scared he wasn't going to believe me. I was so afraid of being called a liar. And you know what? I was. I had a family member tell me that I was a liar, but I had my support from my husband, my doctor, a couple of my close friends, and I got a therapist immediately. And once I started to realize the depth of all of the self-hate, I switched to a psychotherapist who was trauma-informed, who knew things like EMDR, which also, like hypnotherapy, it mimics that REM state of sleep where you're processing your feelings. So EMDR is also like hypnotherapy, about getting it out of your mind and dealt with, and figuring out a way to have it in a little box off to the side instead of running the whole show. Because my pain, it was running the whole show. It truly was. And so I had a second attempt at age 19 also, because there's just the hopelessness. Nobody can understand unless they've been through it. Getting out of bed, just opening your eyes, just getting out of bed is such a battle when you're in a depression. So if I always felt like lazy, I was like, why can't I do anything? Why is my house so dirty? It's just me and my husband. Why are there dishes piled up in the sink? What is wrong with me? Why can't I function? And it was not a good feeling. And I'm very familiar with that feeling. And I thought that I had to be a mom, right? Like, okay, well, you grow up, you get married, you have a job, and you have kids. I was like, okay, there's this checklist for life. And if I can do this checklist, then at least everybody else will think that I'm normal too. There's some really good terms to look into. One of them is called Imposter Syndrome, where you feel like you're faking all of your achievements, and no matter how hard you work or how much effort you put into something, you still feel like you're a fraud and that you're going to get caught. Like an actor getting caught lip syncing even when they're actually singing. So imposter syndrome is a great thing to look into if you've ever felt that way. And in the very beginning, back to the spiritual part, I was so very open once I had my flashbacks, and I was like, oh, it was like I was spiritually open as well as being mentally open and having my heart open. And all of my chakras were super blocked, but I didn't even know I had chakra. So I didn't have a clue. And I'm still working on my sacral chakra quite a bit, but that makes sense because incest was my abuse, right? Which is your ancestral root and your sensuality, all of it getting trashed in one shot. But you know what? Do I look like I feel like trash, or do I look like I'm checked out? No, because I was willing to do the inner work. I had to find my reason why. Back this last time, when I was extremely having suicidal ideations constantly, now I've also learned the term intrusive thoughts. So I know that not every thought that comes through my mind is actually meant for me, and that I've learned not to grab onto everything with fear. It was like my depression and my anxiety. I have also the label complex Ptsd, which is a brain injury due to developing in such a hostile environment. And I can just have so much compassion now, not just for other people, but for myself. Like, wow, I really went through something that no human being should ever experience. And when I take a step back, and I think, if this happened to my best friend, would I think she was a terrible person? Would all of these things I'm talking about myself, would I ever think that about my other friend who I watched go through this domestic violence situation with her husband? No. So then why do I talk to myself that way? And I had to slowly start to learn to love myself, because my whole life I never did. And I didn't have my flashbacks until I was 41. So I had some ground to cover. But because I realized I was damaging my children by not connecting with them and by holding on to my pain, and I wanted to be a game changer for my kids. As far as I know, they have always been safe. My husband is honestly a legitimate good person. Unfortunately, sometimes when you're a victim, you're attracted to the same type of experience again as an adult because it's familiar. It's all you've ever known, so you don't know it doesn't have to be that way. You already feel like you just deserve to be treated like crap. So when you're treated like crap by your own partner, it just fits. So learning that I could choose to no longer fit in that abusive mindset was fantastic. But I wanted to make sure I didn't hurt my children any further by keeping my connection from them and keeping my energy from them, because all of my energy was this big spiraling ball of just get away from me, get away from me. And children need to sit with you and touch you, and having them even just snuggle me, it made my skin crawl just to have them clinging all over me. And this is a common experience that every mother has, not just moms with PTSD or sensory issues. And all of that, there are tools. I promise you that if you want a better life, all it takes is that one step. And you don't have to worry about the whole staircase. And it can be the smallest step ever. The smallest first step is the one that's going to change your life. It's going to put you on this new path, and it's scary because you've never been on it before. I was afraid that if I opened up to my therapist or my husband about, all of my suicidal ideations, my children would be taken from me. I would be locked up in an institution. My husband would leave me. I would be told I was an unfit parent, and none of that came true. So all of my barriers to reaching out for help were just fear. And maybe, 30, 40 years ago, that would have happened. But that was not my experience. I had an incredibly positive experience reaching out for help. And there are so many options that I promise there is something out there that will work for you. And I promise that you can go from a place where death seems like the only way out to working your way through it. I think it's Lao Tzu who said, a courageous man will dare to die. Oh, it's a man with outward courage will dare to die. A man with inward courage will dare to live. And I encourage you today to dare to live. Once I was in this amazing open space of like, wow, there's so much possibility for my life. It was like I finally got to have my childhood. I started trying art. I like to draw with oil pastels, which are basically fancy crayons that you can smash into chunky clumps. So it doesn't take any real skill. So I found an artistic outlet that I enjoyed. I like nature, and I happen to live in a forested part of the world. So I can walk out my front door and there's a pond right across the street. It's amazing. And all of the little lessons that you can see just in nature, and then applying them to myself without judgment, I really, really have learned a lot about reaching out for tools and self-acceptance and self-compassion. And it was very hard to feel like I deserved any of that. So when I first started my healing journey at night, when my brain was a little bit more relaxed right before bedtime, I would put my headphones in and I would go to YouTube and just put in like positive affirmations for trauma recovery. And then because I was already kind of wound down, I would just let it play while I would fall asleep. And eventually I would either shut it off or they just fall out of my ears. But I couldn't listen to it during the day because it made me angry. Who are you to tell me that I'm smart and kind and beautiful and worthy and loving? You don't know who I am. But when I was in that more relaxed state, like with the hypnotherapy and the EMDR right before bedtime, I could tolerate it. And I would wake up the next morning, and instead of feeling this blanket of weight on me before I even opened my eyes, I felt like, I'm telling you, it was bizarre. So I say I re-brainwashed myself. I would do that every night for a few months practically. And I just brainwashed good things into my head until I got to a place where now I made a really big mistake the other day, this past week. It was actually a panic attack, but I didn't know that at the time, where I was out in public and I was so escalated and I just kept escalating. There was a change in a procedure and there was someone yelling a time limit at everybody who was participating. And that was the trigger for me, was the yelling. And they were basically, what I heard was, if you don't do this fast enough, something really bad is going to happen to you. Was that what they were saying? Absolutely not. But because I have PTSD, I have a ridiculous amount of cortisol rushing through my body constantly, and it's being reprogrammed and it's calming down and it's getting better. But it got me, and I started screaming at the guy like a real lunatic. So, but in that moment, I couldn't help myself because I was triggered, and it was consistent yelling. He was yelling over and over and over and over and over. So I snapped and I started screaming. But then afterward, I went to my car and I cried and I let it out because I knew the other triggers I had a relative pass away. I had a financial matter that didn't have a solution yet. I had a couple of really huge things that I couldn't do anything but wait to see how they turned out as far as attending this relative's funeral. And then I had that guy screaming at me. So I sat in my car and I let all of my emotions for all of those situations that I was trying to be so strong about, I cried it out. And I also reached out for help from a professional. I use that text crisis line all the time. So I've been using them for the 9 months that I've been on my healing journey. And this time when I text them, I said, I just need someone else to hear how far I've come, because now I'm being kind to myself, even though I've done. Yeah, I had a panic attack. Yeah, I looked crazy. I'm still worthy of love. I'm still a beautiful soul. I'm still a kind person. I still have value. I had a panic attack. I responded to my triggers. It's okay. No one gets it right all of the time. So I text to them like, I just really need someone to cheer with me for how far I've come right now. I've done this, and this positive thing. And I really am very proud of myself right now. Instead of judging myself for losing it, not understanding why I lost it, blaming the guy who was screaming for all of my feelings. That was a negative coping skill that I used to use, as I would look for an outside way to get my inner turmoil out. They call that your inner wounded child. Until I knew I had one, I used to roll my eyes like, whatever, make excuses. I was so judgy. And then I found out, judging myself and judging other people, I found out that judgy Jamie was the name for my inner wounded child. And I learned from Deep Roots Mystery School on Instagram that you can have an inner wise woman, and you can train your inner wise woman to soothe and comfort your inner wounded child. And she has a great visual on that of a cartoon woman holding a crying little girl. So when I think about it that way, and I use self-compassion, and I use that Jewish, and it's pretty much all over the world except for Christianity, about how all of us have good and evil in us. All of us mess up. It's all just part of the human experience. Starting to accept that what the human experience truly is versus what I expected it to be. I just didn't want to have any waves. I didn't want to have any ripples. I didn't want to have anything disrupt me at all, because everything was a trigger that would make me act out. But I always thought the other person was the one that was wrong. That's called transference also, when I would feel so bad inside that I would just want to get it out by throwing it at other people. So I would just go everywhere being this nasty, mean, vicious person. And I had kids watching me act like this. So the reason for my negative behavior and my depression and my suicidal ideations was because the man who was supposed to care for me and teach me what love is, he screwed it up big time. And I'm not going to tell you that you have to forgive anybody. I'm not going to tell you that you have to move on. I'm going to tell you that I see you, and I'm sending you love. I'm sending you light. I'm sending you hope, because that's what I needed, and that's what I found. No matter how hardly you've been abused, you can still find a way to love yourself, but you have to do the work. And that's why so many people end up on drugs or homeless, because that pain is sometimes seems easier than dealing with the actual pain of saying, oh my God, my father did what to me? That's really something that we're not equipped to deal with. But there's a whole community in the world of mental health providers, therapists, general practitioners, yoga, meditation, running. There's so much science in just moving our bodies. Zumba is a popular gym class here in America. So there's got to be a way. There's always a way. And that's basically what I wanted to say today. I'm more than happy to answer any questions. And if Famina feels like I missed something that she's heard me say somewhere else before, I'm more than happy to take some cues from her as well.
Thank you very much. I was listening to what you were saying very intently. I just want to point this one thing out before we go to the question answer. You mentioned dissociation. So would you please tell me, how did that dissociation manifested in your behavior? Was there any kind of split or not? If I'm being direct. That's what I wanted to.
Did I have a personality split?
Yes, that's what I want.
So you're talking about where I created a new personality for myself to make, no, I didn't get that far. It was more like watching it happen on a TV. Like, oh, look at what that poor little girl in that body is doing down there. I don't talk about this stuff in America too often because we're not as spiritually open, but there's this concept in any shamanistic culture of soul retrieval. So what I feel happened was, little by little, I disassociated parts of my inner self, and I sent myself away piece by piece, my soul, piece by piece. And it came back to me piece by piece too, as I grew and as I told it, this is a safe place for you to be. So my disassociation was more of like sending my soul away and leaving my body just kind of here.
Oh, wow. Okay. So is it something like that you were feeling like a slump or something? Or like you felt that you weren't in your body anymore? Or was it like a slump that you didn't have any energy, or did you feel like
Oh, I never
you're
had
not here?
any energy my whole life, but it was more like blacking out.
Black out.
I
That
would
okay. That
black out, and I would, because
okay. Uh-huh.
I I didn't know anything I would black out while my father was doing it, and then it just wasn't happening.
I understand it now. So um, and you know, you mentioned suicidal ideation a lot of times. So what I was saying that these days abuse comes in a lot of way in childhood. Sometimes they're sexual, sometimes they're verbal, sometimes they're physical, and you know, comparison, the whole "am I worthy enough?" These sort of thoughts, and suicidal ideation. Passive suicidal ideation is a very common in our country, in everywhere actually, between our youth, especially in Gen Z. I belong in Gen Z. You probably you're probably a millennial or Generation X. I don't think you're Generation X. You're probably Gen millennial, right?
No, I'm
Like
older than millennial. I am the other one.
oh, Generation X. Okay, so it's very common in uh the kids my age, or you know, a little older than me. So what I wanted to know, the suicidal ideation, it's like how do you find meaning in your life, is something that if you would say a little elaborately.
Finding a meaning in my life was accepting that I had the same value as any other living human being. And I would think about a person in a wheelchair, maybe with cerebral palsy, where they can only make certain sounds. But if you give them the right tools that they need, they can still. My mother has a very good friend who's a wheelchair bound, cerebral palsy. I can't understand a word she says when she speaks, no matter how hard I try, and she's got multiple books published. Would I ever say that person doesn't have any value? No. So then what makes me any different from anybody else? So the big word that I learned was radical acceptance. You have to just accept reality for what it is, and trying to fight the past and fight the pain and try to just, I got this. I got this. I can do this. Come on, we can do this. Oh, I can't do this. I'm worthless. I don't deserve to live. I should just end my pain now. Nothing has helped. I can't talk to anybody. It's not safe to talk about this. Do people your age get a fear of being institutionalized as well if they talk about it?
They face a bit of stigmatization, but we are getting over the fact. I mean, in the sociological stature, people are showing more and more support, but in some institute, there are a lot of stigmatization that the sufferers have to face. It's unfortunate, but it still happens.
I reached out for help this last time, finally, and I didn't have any of my stigmas come true. I didn't have one single person say, why didn't you tell your abuser to stop? Why didn't you run away? Why didn't you do this? I found a lot of
That
support when I
happens
reached
here a
out.
lot.
So reach out
That happens
somewhere
a
else.
lot.
Now that we're in such a global community, you can find online support. I was in an online support group once a week with other people who had been through whatever they had been through for a while. And that was helpful because it showed me how much progress I had made. And I try not to use the comparison trap because it's a lie. All of us have value, period. End of story. And all of us deserve happiness, period. End of story. Radical acceptance got me to that place. Realizing that having a performance-based self-confidence or self-acceptance was not accurate, and that I have value just because I have life. And getting to that point took a lot of crying. And I had an art journal where I would draw the pictures of my memories to get it out. And I would show it to my therapist. And getting it out will make you feel lighter. It really will. There's a lot of people that have gone through this and had to silently help themselves. A lot of people that are my age or older are so shut down, they'll maybe never recover because it is what it is. But if you're listening to this today, that means that it's not your destiny to be in pain forever. And there's no one path for your healing. There are multiple paths. So if you miss one opportunity, or if one phone call doesn't work for you, keep making more phone calls. Here in the United States, we have suicide crisis phone lines run by the government. And those ones that you call them and they're like, are you going to hurt yourself? Are you going to hurt yourself? Are you going to hurt yourself? And that's that triggered me, actually. So I hung up on them, and then I called another number, and they said, I'm sorry, I can't help you with this. This is out of my element. I said, that's okay. Don't worry about it. And then I called another number. And if you use Google, you can find near you sexual assault crisis centers that offer free training. That's where I started. I started with a local sexual assault crisis center that gave me free online therapy, video therapy, because of coronavirus, which actually worked out better for me just to do it in my home and not have to travel and find someone to watch my children for me. So there's a lot of benefits to online therapy that help. And also, when I'm in the same room as them, I can feel more awkward sometimes. So the video kind of depersonalizes what I'm saying for me. So I might feel more open because it's just a person on the other end of a video call. It's not a human in the room that I'm afraid is going to judge me. So there's all kinds of ways that we can tell ourselves something is good or bad. Like the video therapy might not be good for you because you might need someone who can physically hold your hand. You might need someone
or direct eye contact. You know, sometimes
yes.
video call, you feel like the person who's looking at a camera is clearly not looking at your eye, but you need to feel their gaze on you.
And if you need that, go for it.
Yeah, and also I want to mention that, you know, I completely agree with the whole online forums and therapy centers that are helping, because recently Moshal Mental Health are doing an incredible job in, you know, advocating mental health issues. But in some, as you said, in some institutions they're not quite helpful. But in some institutions they're really doing the works and they're really helping people. And it's finally coming forward how necessary it is for our society. So Jamie, with your permission, I'm going to jump into the question answer segment. Okay. So our first question comes from Suba Samaun Ohi. How to cope up with anxiety by myself. I'm also suffering from depression, panic disorder, and symptoms of PTSD.
Thank you for being so open and for sharing that. Thank you for letting me have a common experience with you. The anxiety I really did need medication for, but I didn't want to be sleepy all of the time or groggy. So what I did was I went and I asked the pharmacist, what medication for anxiety do you fill the most that doesn't make people sleepy or high? I'm not looking to escape my life at this point. I'm looking to check into it. I wanted to get my energy levels up. So my doctor put me on a blood pressure medication for my anxiety, and that knocked it down for me. When my physical anxiety is running rampant, there's nothing I can do except for wait it out. So try some self-talk. This is my anxiety. This is my body's nervous system whacked out thinking I'm being attacked by a predator. I am safe today. I am safe today. So positive affirmations go a long way with that too. And know that you're not alone. Think about me and Famina. when you start to feel anxiety, and hear us in your head saying, you can do it. You are worthy. You are beautiful. And we'll give you that support. Watch this video as many times as you need to hear me say, you are loved. You are lovable. Step by step. Don't put any expectations on yourself other than to just breathe through it. Some of my friends that don't take medication for their anxiety use exercise, because exercising releases all kinds of hormones that are amazing in our bodies. So if you can, go for a walk, whatever type of exercise you enjoy. And if you're too depressed to even move at the time, you can say to yourself, I love myself anyway. This is part of my story. I saw someone who's successfully navigating this, and I cling to that hope that I can successfully navigate this too.
Thank you very much, Jamie. I hope, Ohi, you got your answer. Our next question is very related to the discussion you just had. What do you suggest when you suddenly remember about those incidents? I guess she's referring to the
flashbacks and the memories.
Flashbacks, yeah. Those can be painful, and you want to shut out immediately because you don't want to face them. Dealing with that alone.
I used my husband and my therapist for those, and I used that text crisis line. So I reached out for help because it was so overwhelming for me. So reaching out for help and having at least one safe person you can tell all of those memories to helps to get it out, and to know that was their error, not my error. I did not deserve that. I'm safe today. That was a big key phrase that I repeated to myself a lot for my anxiety and for that. They're not abusing me anymore today. It's been 20 years since I've even seen that person. Today I am safe. Today I am loved by this person, this person, this person. Today I love myself. And you just have to let it pass.
I guess that answers your question, Ishika. And what I see the next question is, at the age of 14 or 15, a girl is just a kid, and also she's getting mentally abusive torture. What can she do to prevent it, and how can she come out of the situation?
That is a hard question because children feel trapped. I hope that now if a child that's experiencing that goes to a teacher or a law enforcement officer or a religious leader, that there's intervention done on their behalf. Here in America, if I was 14 or 15, I could call the child abuse hotline for myself, and I could say, I'm going through this, please come and help me. And then that would open up the door for me to go live in a different home. Or if that child can live with a different person, that would be ideal. But this is definitely a very good question that I'm thinking about a lot myself right now too, is for the child whose parents lie and look good on the outside and fool everybody else. My father, he volunteered in Sunday school. He volunteered at the camp for kids. He gave away money. He smiled and he made jokes. So if at the time I tried to say any of this, they did cover it up. My father got caught with a couple of other children, and instead of getting the police involved or criminally addressing it, they just kicked him out of the church and hushed it up. So I understand how trapped that child is, and that is exactly why I use those negative coping skills of disassociation and the depression and the anxiety. So what we can do for her is we can just listen. We can try to find a safe place for her to go if she's willing to leave her family, maybe. She can try reaching out to, we have like homeless shelters just for abused women here in America. If she's willing to try some of those tactics, I don't know what her resources are, but at some point she will be able to move out of that home. And I don't know if she can try to love herself and been in the middle of the abuse. If you have an extra space she could sleep, maybe offer to let her stay with you. And one thing that I want to mention is when you're dealing with someone else being the victim, have good boundaries. So when I'm telling my husband, my father did X, Y, and Z, he's not absorbing it as a personal thing into himself. He's just listening and like keeping
That is
his own
important.
guard up. Boundaries with people in trauma are super important. You can't
Okay,
save the world.
I just want to inject one point. Do you have siblings?
I don't talk about people that are still alive, but yes, I do.
Uh, no, I meant that did they go through similar experiences? I mean, you don't have to answer if you don't want to. I just, you can just totally dodge the question.
Let's go to the next question.
Okay, thank you. That was okay. So next question is from Mushid Alam Huya. Are you grateful to your pain that is chose you over everyone else?
That sounds very like philosophical, like heading toward enlightenment, because life is full of suffering, but it's also full of the overcoming of suffering. So if you're not presented with the opportunity to suffer, you won't be presented with the opportunity to grow. That's the thought that I have behind that question. Does that sound like I got it right, Famina?
Yeah, I think you got the heck of it. I think you
So
got it.
the answer for me most of the time is no. I would never, ever say that was for my benefit. And there's also some spiritual things with soul contracts that before we're born, we choose our family.
I don't quite agree with that personally. It sounds so ableist, and I don't really like it because it actually puts a lot of blame, and its roots over to victim blaming once all over again. So
Thank
it
you.
and nobody deserves that sort of pain, honestly.
Really, yes.
So
So I'm grateful that I have the support I need to overcome it. And I'm grateful that today I'm a stronger person, but we're all supposed to get stronger and change as we age.
that's a very inspiring set of lines that you said, and I think everybody who's listening, that's gonna give them a lot of help. And now we're gonna take our last question. So let's see. How do you maintain your personal boundary? This
First,
is
I
a
had
good
to
one.
know that I was allowed to have boundaries because abuse is all about having your boundaries stripped from you. I didn't even know I could tell people no. So, people pleasing was a huge problem for me. Imagining that other people hated me, trying to guess what somebody else wanted me to do or say. So, the boundaries thing is brand new for me. And the way I maintain it now is my self talk. I'll feel like that little warning bell, like I'm not comfortable with what this person just did or what this person just said. So I got to the point where I'm like, I'm allowed to feel uncomfortable with somebody else. Just like I tell my kids, if somebody makes you feel uncomfortable, you have the right to address that. So politely saying, I don't appreciate that, but it takes practice. So my answer is practice. Know that you can have boundaries, and it doesn't make you a mean person to tell somebody, I can't do that right now. It's not your responsibility to save the world. It's not your responsibility to worry about other people's feelings. You are not responsible for anybody's reaction to your boundaries or anybody's feelings to your boundaries. It is nothing personal against them as a human being. It is what your need is, and you loving yourself enough to say, hey, excuse me, I have this need. End of story.
The whole practicing thing is a very new perspective, I must say. Most people don't tell you. They just say that, just start doing it. And as if like when we start doing it, we're going to be expert about it. Even in setting boundaries. I
The
think the
first
whole
time I had to set boundaries, my anxiety was through the roof. I was basically, my body was having a panic attack while I was saying, I'm sorry, no, I can't do that. Because I was imagining they were going to cut me out of their life. They were going to no longer be my friend. They were going to punish me for telling them no. So once I started realizing that the root of all of those thoughts was just low self-esteem and trauma, that helps. Awareness and practice are two very good things.
yeah, that is a very beautiful end note that you said. So thank you very much. It was very enlightening and it was very helpful and it was very, uh, I'd say, informative. The session being with you, I'm very grateful that I get to be in the session with you. So I know that you have already mentioned a few of Bertho's works in today's in your speech. So what is your overall review? How do you think we're doing? And if is there any note of advice that you want to give to us?
For Team Bertho or for everybody in general?
Well, I was going for Team Bertho, but you can say for anybody else too. I think that's gonna help them too.
Team Bertho is crushing it. They're nailing it. Those award-winning short films are amazing. The speakers that you have are so friendly and approachable and knowledgeable. So they're not just spitting out facts at you. So just, and you're very professional with your video performance here. So I've really enjoyed
Thank
just
you.
all of the resources that you offer. Then yeah, just keep offering resources so that when people have questions like what can this trapped 13-year-old girl do, maybe you have a list of shelters on your website that they can access, or a list of phone numbers they can call, some action steps they can take when they're ready.
Yeah, that's thank you very much, and I'm very happy that you actually experienced and watched and really observed all our works too, and that makes me very happy because you've seen those sessions before. So I really hope that is there any pointer you want to give me as a host?
You're fantastic. Just be you. Go with your gut. Everything that you're doing, you probably just go with your gut. Just keep running for it. Keep
Thank you.
changing the world.
Same. I think it's a small step everybody needs to take. Everybody is thinking about, in a very superhero level. They want to be Captain America or they want to be Batman. They want to do the grand stuff. But I think just a little by little, we can make the works just by taking a little step. And you mentioned various establishments in your country that we still don't have in here. I mean, some people are starting over, but they're not getting the spotlight yet. So I think if we keep the focus and we start giving focus to where it's needed, I think in near future we can have the same sort of help and facilities without the stigma in our country and in our community as well.
The stigma is all right here. Caring about what other people might think about me. Once I
Thank you.
didn't care what anybody thought about me and I just reached out for help, amazing things started to happen.
That is very inspiring, and I hope everybody who's going through similar issues and is going through any sort of trauma, I think I today's video is gonna teach is definitely taught us a lot about just being brave. I think Jamie, you are incredibly brave. This is what I wanted to say to you ever since I read your life lesson and today the session, your speech, and it's so brave. I just kept thinking this woman is so brave. I mean, you are a lot older than me.
I'm
I'm
42
still
and I
growing.
own that. And I want to be an example for other older people too. Like, hey, middle age is fun too. We're going to go for a bike ride at the beach as a family later today. I mean,
That is great. That is great that you and I really, and it's really beautiful how you handle the situations in your family, and I hope that your kids are doing great too, and your husband sounds like a wonderful man. I just want to say that you are brave because the way you projected your scenery to us to help us. And it took a lot of courage to come up with, and a complete stranger from almost thousands of miles away, and you're sharing your story. That is extremely brave, and I hope that we get to learn a little bit, a glimpse, or a sliver of bravery and courage from you as well. Thank you
Thank
very
you
much
so
for being here.
much.
Thank you. So, viewers, this was our session today. I hope you had a great time